Hi everyone, this is Lana. Welcome to my channel. I just wanted to do a little energy update. I have been feeling a lot of release during these couple of days, a lot of heavy energies as well. And I was receiving some messages about the twin flames and in general of the collective, what we're going through and what kind of release this is. And I was getting the word forgiveness, and especially self-forgiveness. So in order to integrate the shadow and to fully be able to embrace divinity, we have to be, let's say, in the most neutral point. So a lot of people think that the shadow or the so-called negative aspects of ourselves are something that we need to treat a certain way or that we need to get rid of, especially also when it comes to in the spiritual paradigm when we talk about ego. But really, I think that ego is being redefined, or we should, or we could redefine what we actually think of as ego in a more loving way. So I try to think about ego the way that the inner child, like seeing the ego as an aspect of us that is a part of our inner child. And it usually has all its triggers in the inner child wounds. So in order to fully integrate and to be able to transcend our fears, all the lower emotions, and especially if you're in the twin flame journey, the emotions that we sometimes think that we have already dealt with through previous relationships. I'm talking about those especially related to relationships, so in a relationship dynamic. Through the journey, they usually come up again. So you may have just met your twin, or you may have known them for a while now. And usually what happens when the twin flames meet is that there is like a deeper layer. So everything that you thought you were and everything that you thought you dealt with, if there's anything remaining, it will come to the surface. If there's anything remaining that you actually have to work with or that you have to integrate. So I remember when I woke up, or when I had my awakening, back then it was a lot of about clearing and about really achieving discipline and long hours of meditation and transcending things. But it was, of course this was my path, but it was a lot of what I felt was that there was a lot of judgment involved. So I was judging my actions, I was judging what is good and what is bad, I was judging things in an unconscious way, which is how we are kind of trained to do, right? How we are kind of programmed depending on where you grew up. But as an example to show you this, when I was little, I'm talking about the age, I think from 3 to 7, I started to have a lot of visions. And I would wake up in the middle of the night and see a lot of things in my room, shadows, lights. I always saw my guardian angels. So I had a lot of like interaction with these energies that I didn't understand. But the little knowledge that I had of these things, because my parents were kind of Catholic, actually kind of atheist, but they me and my brother, we grew up in this, well, we were baptized, you know, and we didn't have absolutely no duty to do that, but because my friends went to this catechism school or whatever, and they wanted to do their first communion, I also wanted to do it because it was what people did, right? So, or what kids did. So I went there, and I remember the first time I learned about God and about Jesus and about heaven and hell and heaven and earth and I saw this movie of the crucifixion of Jesus, and it was really a very, very profound but also very traumatic experience, because that was the first time that I actually had a concept of good and bad and good and evil. So partly I was very disappointed because in my, I don't know, child perspective, I always thought, you know, we were all angels, we were all good, and everything was divine. That's the way I experienced everything in a way. So after this, I started seeing in my room, when I saw these visions, I started seeing shadows as well. I started seeing like beings that looked very dark and very scary and kind of monster-like. So through my awareness of evil, or of not good, or the opposite of good, through my unconscious, and of course through the collective unconscious, because we're all tapped to it, I started to perceive these like evil or bad creatures, you know, when before all I perceived was light. So I started to have this period where I was very scared and I didn't sleep, and I would wake up every day, like I would try to go to my parents, and my parents always thought, you know, she's having bad dreams, these are nightmares. But I was always awake and I couldn't sleep. So one day I talked to God, because I always talked to him, and well, still do, but then it was like I would never go to sleep without talking to him. So, and I told him, you know, I don't understand what I'm seeing. Please, I'd rather not see anything else, but I don't want to see these things that I don't understand. Please take them away. And the next day, they were gone. I never saw them again. This was, I think, at the age of, I don't know, 7, 8, maybe 10. And then I never saw anything again, except for a couple of surgeries that I had when I was in anesthesia. I saw some things, but like in a wake-up state, in a conscious state, I didn't see anything until I was 17, until I did this meditation and healing course, basically out of the blue, and everything came back like in that instant. So there was a time gap of, I don't know, like 10 years, where my reality was pretty normal and pretty real. And the moment that I started seeing these things again, after I did this meditation, I was completely scared. And I remember the feeling, the fear of seeing not only the good, because of course I saw a lot more and I could understand a lot more of what I was seeing, but I was also afraid to go to sleep at night in my bed and to be in my house alone. Why? Because I had the impression of what I had lived when I was 7 or 3, 4 until I was 7. So in my mind, the fear of this little girl who nobody could explain what she was seeing, it appeared again in my body, and I could feel it through my whole body. So I realized that I was afraid of seeing the same things that I had seen when I was a kid. And it actually happened. I saw some pretty dark things and sensed some pretty dark energies. But then through this experience and through many really crazy things that I saw and that happened at that time, it led me to this higher understanding that I was actually dealing with things that I hadn't properly dealt with in the past because I didn't have the tools. And now that I was more grown up and that I had more experience and knowledge, I started researching these things that I was seeing. I started looking for teachers, looking for other people who had similar experiences in their childhood and then after. And then I realized after a long time, I think after maybe 2 years, well, in the beginning I realized that this was like my awakening, that I was being awakened to this higher truth. But I kind of was really afraid of the path because of the things that I had seen and felt. And I was also scared of seeing the energies of other people and other things that I had experienced as a kid. But what I realized was that, and I talked about this with my teacher at the time, with the teacher that I did that course. She told me, you know, because I came back the next day after I saw all these things, and I told her, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to see these things. I just want to go back and be normal, you know, have my normal life. And I remember she told me, you know, you have 2 options. You can either try to ignore this and pretend that nothing happened and forget and not grow, or you have the opportunity to evolve right now, to take responsibility of your gifts and to take responsibility of your life and to go through the fears, to go through the clearing, to go through the process that you already know is going to be hard, because I sensed that, you know, it's going to have its highs and lows. You can do either way. She told me, if you don't want to come back and to the course and finish and meditate, it's fine. You can do whatever you want. And so I was left there with this decision. And of course, I made the decision of going back and really going through all the things that I had to go through. And this is part of the ascension and the awakening, that before you get to the really amazing parts, before you get to the part where you are embodying your whole divinity, you have to deal with all the parts of you that are telling you otherwise. It's not really that you're dealing with darkness, but it's that you are dealing with your own limitations of your own divinity, of your own light. So you are dealing with your own demons, literally, but it doesn't mean that they are demons. It means that they are a part of our psychic as humans, and part of it is ours, part of it is collective, as I said, but it is a part that you came here to clear, and that is your responsibility, just as is your life. Because it's the same thing. When you meet your twin, there's this moment where there is this enlightenment, and you're like, wow, and you discover something new. You discover, or something old actually, you discover a part of who you are. But then the process begins where things kind of get really, or they can get really scary and really dark very quickly. And you have 2 choices. You can either abandon the journey and try to go back to what you thought you were or what you were, or you can choose to go through the layers until you get to the light, through the layers that you yourself built, or that humanity itself built, thinking that we are not part of this divine process. So it's really a task of digging deep, of being a detective, of going through the things and knowing where the blocks are and removing them. And of course there are many ways and many approaches to this. I'm just doing here like a general picture of it, and also trying to explain to you why the spiritual journey is sometimes not so easy, but why also we have to keep going in order to get to the good parts, because there are good parts. One of the really amazing things of going through pain and through fear is that you conquer them. As you release, when you really face them, when you really face your fear or your pain, when you let them happen, when you surrender them to the light, or when you surrender them to the process, there's a moment where you stop feeling that pain and that fear. So, like when I was a child, I couldn't deal with these things that I was seeing, but then I had the opportunity when I was more grown up to deal with that pain, and I dealt with it it was like the same little kid was there feeling the same feelings. I was already grown up, living with my boyfriend, and I remember being terrified of being alone at night and having the same feeling of the little girl who couldn't go to sleep at night because she was afraid of seeing things in her room. And now I laugh and it's very funny, but at the time I was terrified, and I really didn't know if I was going crazy or what to do, and there weren't like all this information available. I was just very alone in this, so I didn't know how to handle it. But when I started researching, when I started taking care of it, when I started really looking up the answers and digging and going through books and books of spirituality and going through different classes and different approaches and going to different religions, I finally understood that there was only one truth. And that one truth had a lot to do with me and with my own revealing of my divinity and with my own knowing of who I was. So the point of all of this was actually to get to know who I really was, and not who I was pretending to be, and not who I was told to be, and not what I was told to be. So in order to get to know that, I had to get rid of all the other definitions that had ever defined me in order to come to my truth of who I really am. And it's a process, and it's a long process. But the moment you start liberating these fears, they go away and they never come back. Like right now, and through the work that I do, through being a healer, I have seen many things, but I am never afraid. I have never been afraid. After I conquered this, or I understood, and it was through research and through experimenting and through really understanding what energy is and the dynamics of energy, and of course through understanding who I was and why I was seeing these things. The moment I understood this, or at least I grasped a little bit of truth in that in myself, the fear went away and the trust started to come back. And it had to do a lot with the trust in me, but also trust in God and the trust in divinity. So sometimes we don't even know that we lose things in the way, and somehow our paths take us to the exact place, time, situation that we need in order to retrieve them. So we're kind of digging and digging, and sometimes the digging is really bad, but then this beautiful treasure comes up, this beautiful gem, this beautiful insight appears, and it's all worth it. So I'm encouraging you to keep on going, to know that you are not alone, to know that there are many of us who are doing this work. There are many of us who are here willing and able to help you. I am able to assist you from the bottom of my heart. I am here. If you're going through any of this, if you have no idea what to do, if you need answers, if you want to work on yourself with someone to support you and to stand by your side, I'm here. And there are many people out there. So please step out, step into the light, and get to know yourself, because that is going to be the biggest miracle in your life. And also for you, and also for your twin flame, for your families, and for everyone that you cross paths with, embrace your divinity, because it's here. It just needs to be embraced by you. Okay, so I will leave you with that message. I hope it brings you a lot of clarity and a lot of peace and a lot of strength. I'm sending you so much love and light. Atma Namaste.